The little baby shark awoke in the shallow waters of his lagoon, the sun rising above the horizon and sending golden rays through the waves. The sand shimmered softly, and the seaweed swayed like ribbons in a gentle dance. He had spent many days in the comfort of this safe place, learning how to swim, how to chase small fish, and how to follow the rhythm of the tides. Yet his heart was restless. He felt the call of the open sea beyond the reef, a whisper in the currents that told him there was more to see, more to learn, and more to discover than what lay in the shallow waters of his home. He stretched his fins, flicked his tail, and swam toward the edge of the lagoon. The reef loomed ahead, tall and glowing with countless colors, a wall that separated the calm nursery of his youth from the vast ocean beyond. His heart beat faster, filled with both excitement and hesitation. Beyond this boundary waited the unknown. He hesitated for a moment, then followed the pull of his curiosity and slipped through a passage between two coral towers. The world that opened before him was like nothing he had ever seen. The reef stretched wide, its corals branching in endless shapes and hues. Some rose tall like trees, others curled like spirals, and some spread like fans across the water. Their colors burned in shades of red, yellow, violet, and green, glowing in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the surface. Schools of fish swirled through the branches like ribbons of light, their scales flashing silver, blue, and gold. The baby shark's eyes widened. He had entered a shimmering city built not by hands, but by the sea itself. He swam slowly through the maze of coral, his fins brushing against the currents that shifted around each structure. Tiny creatures clung to the surface of snails crawling along ridges, crabs hiding in crevices, shrimp flashing their delicate feelers as they darted in and out. Starfish spread across the stones, their arms gripping the surfaces like decorations placed by the tide. Every detail pulsed with life, and the baby shark felt his heart fill with wonder. A group of parrotfish swam past, their bodies painted in dazzling hues of turquoise, pink, and green. They scraped at the coral with their strong beaks, sending clouds of sand drifting upward. The baby shark watched as the grains settled across the seabed, realizing that even their feeding gave back to the reef by creating new ground for plants and creatures. The reef was a balance of giving and receiving, every movement shaping the whole. As he swam deeper into the coral kingdom, he noticed anemones waving their long, stinging arms. Hidden within them darted clownfish, their bright orange and white bodies weaving fearlessly among the tentacles. The anemones offered shelter, and the clownfish offered protection in return, a partnership written in the currents. The baby shark hovered to watch, his mind learning the quiet lesson of cooperation. The reef grew brighter as the sun climbed higher. Shafts of light poured through the water, illuminating the coral as though lanterns had been hung on every branch. Schools of silver sardines swept through the beams, their bodies flashing like sparks. Butterfly fish swam in pairs, their yellow fins glowing like drops of sunlight. Angelfish glided gracefully, their elongated fins trailing like banners. The reef was alive with motion, a festival of colors and patterns. The baby shark swam into a clearing where a massive coral head stood like the throne of the reef. Its surface was covered in folds and grooves, each one home to smaller creatures. Bright feather worms extended delicate fans from their tubes, then snapped back in at the slightest ripple. Small crabs scuttled across the surface, their shells patterned with swirls that matched the coral. The baby shark circled slowly, marveling at how one structure could support so much life. He swam through arches of coral that formed gateways into hidden chambers. Inside, he found caves glowing with soft blue light, where schools of small fish hovered like clouds. He found sponges shaped like vases, their wide openings filtering the water. He found brittle stars hiding beneath stones, their long arms reaching outward in the shadows. The reef was full of secrets, each chamber a new discovery. In one corner, he came upon a giant clam resting on the sand. Its shell was massive, ridged with age, and its lips glowed with iridescent blue and green. The clam pulsed faintly as it filtered water, its vast body alive with calm power. The baby shark swam close and marveled at its stillness. It reminded him that even in the bustling reef, Some lives thrive by waiting patiently, growing slowly, and offering quiet gifts to the whole. He continued his journey, passing sea fans that waved in the current like banners, sponges that glowed in soft reds and yellows, and corals that pulsed with gentle light. Everywhere he turned, the reef shimmered with beauty. He realized why the currents had whispered to him, why his heart had longed to leave the lagoon. The ocean was wider than he had ever dreamed, filled with wonders that could never be counted in a single glance. As the afternoon grew long, the reef grew calmer. Some fish tucked themselves into the coral, their movements slowing as they prepared for rest. The baby shark swam upward, where the last rays of sunlight pierced the surface. From above, the water looked like a field of stars, each ripple catching the golden glow. He drifted in silence, his heart full of what he had seen. When the sun finally slipped beyond the horizon, the reef changed again. Bioluminescent plankton rose from the sand, glowing in shades of blue and green. Jellyfish drifted among them, their bodies pulsing like lanterns. The reef, so brilliant in daylight, now shimmered with a softer, more mysterious beauty. The baby shark swam among the glowing lights, his body outlined by the faint glow. He felt as though he was swimming among the stars themselves. He found a hollow between coral ridges where the sand was smooth and the current gentle. He curled his tail beneath him and rested, letting the glow of plankton drift around him. His eyes closed slowly, his body rocked by the tide, his dreams already filling with the wonders of the shimmering reef. And so, the little baby shark ended the first day of his great journey, his heart alive with colors, his spirit steady with calm. The lagoon was far behind him now, and the ocean stretched wide ahead. The reef had given him its first gifts, beauty, harmony, and the promise of endless discovery. The morning returned with a pale, steady light, and the little baby shark rose from his sandy hollow among the corals. The memory of the shimmering reef still glowed within him, yet the pull of the unknown pressed softly at his fins. The open blue beyond the towers of coral seemed wider than before, like a road that invited quiet steps. He felt the current stroke his sides and answer his curiosity with a gentle nudge. The lagoon was far behind, the reef now a living tapestry he could fold into his heart. And ahead stretched the deeper water where shadows lengthened and sounds grew slow and round. He moved toward the outer rim of the reef where the colors thinned and the shapes loosened, where the bright crowd of fish gave way to open spaces folded in blue. The slope tipped downward, and the light began to gather itself into narrow spears instead of wide sheets. He hovered on the brink, as if listening to the sea's breath, and then he let his body tilt forward and followed the incline into water that felt older and colder, water that seemed to remember vast distances and patient journeys. At first, the deep greeted him with stillness. The sand fell away to rock, the rock gave way to walls, and the walls softened into long ledges that stepped like stairs into the blue. He kept his pace slow, drawing careful arcs with his tail, and in that slowness the hidden shapes revealed themselves. A broad, pale figure lay on the bottom like a drifting cloud, and for a moment it was only sand shaped as wings. Then the wings lifted, and a ray rose with the grace of a thought, water sliding off its back in shining veils. Another ray followed, darker and speckled, rippling the sandy floor with a single elegant downstroke. The little shark let them pass and learned their quiet lesson of being vast without hurry. The ledge opened into a trough where small currents met and braided together. Here, slender silverfish held their places with barely a twitch, each body pointed into the flow, each eye bright with attention. When the current swelled, they leaned into it as if leaning into a song. When the current softened, they relaxed as if exhaling. He drifted above them and felt the stream press his chest like a gentle hand. He understood that in the deep every movement mattered, and that stillness too was its own kind of strength. Beyond the trough, the water lifted him along a cliff that fell away into darkness. Sponges shouldered the stone in reds and umbers, tubes and vases sipping the sea with patient mouths. Delicate fans spread like pages open to invisible wind, their branches fine as eyelashes, trembling whenever his shadow crossed. Tiny shrimps stitched light along the fin ribs in pulses, a code the cliff seemed to read. He swam near enough to feel the fans calm the current, then moved on, unwilling to bend even a single filament with his wake. The light thinned to a dream of light, colors folded into blue, edges blurred, and sounds lengthened into round bells that rang inside his bones. A lantern flickered to his left, then another, and then a ribbon of such lanterns appeared, each fish carrying a pearl of its own making. They swam in a murmuring river that turned and fell and rose again, the thread luminous against the wall of night. He kept beside them for a time, not touching, not breaking their flow, warned by the thought that in the deep each life brought its own candle. A little farther on, the ceiling of water above him shimmered and parted into a gateway of moving glass. Comb jellies drifted there like ghosts of rainbows, bands of light chasing themselves along their ribs. He crossed beneath them slowly, and their faint glow slid over his back like a soft cloak. Beyond them the sea opened suddenly, vast as sky, and he found himself suspended in a plain of gentle falling where flakes of white wandered downward forever. He tasted the water and understood that these were the leavings of distant lives, small bits of once bright things that fed the dark. The deep took nothing in greed and refused nothing offered. It turned endings into beginnings with the patience of a tide. A shape like a drifting flag hovered ahead, silent and translucent. Then the flag folded and unfolded, and he knew it for a squid. It changed from milk glass to storm cloud to pearl and back, each color a thought loosed into water. Another arrow of squid flashed by, their mantles pumping in quick resolve, and with them a smoke of light bloomed and faded ink that remembered the stars. The little shark slowed to watch the cloud unravel and vanish, and he learned that vanishing too can be beautiful when it leaves the water clearer than before. He took the current that curled along the cliff as space and let it carry him into a corridor where the sea hummed like a low drum. There the stone wavered into arches and alcoves, and the alcoves glowed with the breath of small anemones. Feather worms unfurled and sipped, then tucked themselves away with the brisk tenderness of a closing hand. A brittle star extended a single limb into the light and withdrew it again, practicing its own quiet courage. The corridor ended in a shelf wide enough to be a room. He settled in the room and rested, holding the slow beat of the deep against his chest until it matched his own. When he rose to move again, a current from farther down carried notes too round to be anything but great voices. The sound was not loud, it was large, it belonged to bodies he could not see, and yet it saw him in the way a horizon sees. He turned toward it and felt the water deepen under him, each stroke falling through a bluer blue. The voices braided into longer lines, patient as rivers that forgot nothing. He thought of bells he had never heard and of roads he had never swum and found the same trust in both. The current softened against a field of tall white forms planted in the sand like candles. Their branches opened and closed in pulses of pale fire. They were sea pens, gardens of soft coral rooted to the floor, and small fish threaded them with stitches of silver. He wove carefully among their columns and felt their light skim his flanks. Beyond the garden, a single steady glow burned like a harbor lamp. He swam toward it and found not stone but a mouth, a giant clam nested in a cradle of rock, its lips a woven tapestry of blues and greens stitched with moonlight. The clam opened with the patience of a dawn and closed with the patience of a dusk. He bowed in the water without bending and moved on. The slope fell away again, and with it fell the last certainty of distance. The dark did not press, it welcomed. In that welcome, a shape grew that was more movement than thing, sweeping from shadow to shadow with wings too wide to be measured. The manta passed above him like a quiet thought crossing a great mind. Its mouth received the sea's small gifts. Its back carried galaxies of small hitchhiking lives. For a handful of heartbeats he swam under that living sky and felt the stirring that true majesty leaves behind, the wish to become large not in size but in gentleness. He turned into a side valley where the floor was soft with fine silt. Here the deep practiced writing with thin, shy lines. A snail drew a question mark and wandered away from it. A shrimp made a handful of commas and hid beneath them. A small ray signed its name with a ripple and then rested. He learned the alphabet there and read that the sea speaks all the time, if the eye is slow enough to listen. From the valley, the current brought him to a terrace where the water smelled faintly of stone warmed by buried fire. The rock pouted small chimneys, and from the chimneys rose threads of mineral smoke that swirled and vanished, leaving behind gardens made of metal and salt. Tiny pale creatures grazed there as if on mountain meadows. He did not linger. The water here spoke a language that did not belong to his bones, but he honored the terraces with his silence and passed on. The sound of distant bodies returned, now accompanied by a softer clatter, like shells touching gently in a bowl. He followed until the clatter found its mouth, a slope where crabs the color of iron skittered in slow parades. They sorted shells and stones with ceremonial care, lifting, turning, setting down, as if building a music no ear could hear. He watched a small one tud a shell 3 times its size along a line only it could see, and he learned a geometry made of patience. The depth loosened at last, not into the bright reef, but into a wide twilight where day and night braided like seaweed. Here the bodies were fewer and larger. A seal drifted by wrapped in her own stillness. A lone tuna slit the water with a blade of mussel and disappeared into the thought from which it came. Far off, a shape like a hill turned out to be a sleeping whale, her breath trailing strands of silver that widened into lace before they broke. He did not approach, only kept his distance with the courtesy the deep had taught him, and let her slow heartbeat teach his tail a slower stroke. He rose to warm water for a while and then let himself fall again, practicing the ladder the sea had set down for all travelers. Each rung had its creatures, its voices, its small rituals made of eating and hiding and courting and resting. The more rungs he climbed, the clearer it became that there was no single kingdom. There were many, threaded by the road of current and stitched by the needle of time. He was not lost among them. He was being sewn into them, one pass at a time. Toward what felt like evening, though the surface lay far above, strands of blue fire began to drift from the seafloor, a slow snow of light. The flakes were living, tiny and complete. When his fin brushed them, they brightened, as if happy to be noticed. More rose to greet him until he wore a cloak of sparks that came and went without ever quite leaving. In that cloak he felt both seen and hidden, like a rock covered in moss. He understood why the deep never seems empty to those who have loved it. The cliff returned at his side, now smooth as a whale's back, and along its skin moved thin eels, transparent as breath. Their eyes were bright copper coins, their bodies were words before mouths are learned. He swam beside them until they slipped into the stone again and became the idea of eels. From a nearby hollow, a pair of eyes glowed and then softened. A grouper large enough to darken a doorway rocked gently among scrolls of sponge. He offered a small tilt of his body, a greeting measured in water, and passed. A long plateau opened without warning, and along its edge hung curtains of descending bubbles. Each bubble caught a scrap of light and carried it upward, gently insistent. He let the bubbles lift him for a few tail beats and felt the old game of childhood return, the one where rising needs no reason but joy. When the curtain ended, he slipped free and held himself steady again, glad for the play and glad to stop it. From below came a rattling as delicate as rain on shell. He dipped and found a forest of black corals, each branch tipped with pale buds that clicked faintly as they opened. Small shrimp grazed carefully, and tiny fish wore the forest-like jewelry, bright stones in patient trees. The clicks arranged themselves into a rhythm he could not keep but could admire. He left before his wake could tangle any twig. He paused where the valley narrowed to a throat, and there the current gathered itself into a ribbon that sang of elsewhere. He could follow it forward into a darkness that promised new alphabets, or he could turn toward water that warmed and brightened by degrees, carrying him back toward the road that would rejoin the world above. He rested in the throat and listened. The deeper voice asked for longer time and greater quiet than his small body could yet give. The gentler voice promised plenty still unseen without demanding more than he held. He chose the gentler voice, learning that bravery sometimes means saving the furthest path for another tide. The ribbon bore him upward through bands of blue that lightened like pages turned toward morning. Shapes grew clearer, edges sharpened, colors returned cautiously. The stone softened back into coral, the fans into leaves of light. He recognized the parapets of the outer reef as one recognizes a friend at a distance, not because of face, but because of gait. He did not rush. He ascended the way the sea changes seasons, with patience and devotion to every smallest thing. At the shelf where the cliff first began, he settled again and let the current thread through his gills. Day's last brightness filtered down in quiet ladders. Along one ladder a file of anchovies streamed, each a small mirror unwilling to keep any light for itself. Along another, jellyfish drifted, their bells speaking languages that needed only water to be understood. He turned in the center and memorized the arrangement so his dreams could hang it later on a wall of sleep. He crossed a field of sand sanded by the day, smooth as thought after weeping. The only marks were those the deep keeps only until the next breath, the rea's sigh, the crab's sentence, the snail's question. He added nothing to that page but the indent of his shadow, a line that vanished when he moved his tail again. He appreciated the page for being so ready to be rewritten. When night finally pressed a thumb to the surface far above, the blue around him answered with its own handwriting. Plankton lit as he passed, glowing where he had touched and fading where he had not, until his path behind him looked like a constellation arguing kindly with itself. He swam through his own small galaxy and discovered that joy can be quiet without being less true. He found a niche in the reef wall where the water folded into itself and made a soft pocket. There he curled, nose to tail, and let the pocket teach him stillness. In that stillness, the day replayed itself without hurry. Rays rose and settled, lanternfish braided and unbraided. Squid wrote and erased. The manta crossed like a tender thought that refuses to grow cold. The whale slept, and sleep spread out from her like a blanket. He let the blanket cover him. As he drifted, he understood that the deep had not asked him to conquer it or catalog it. It had asked him to come as an honest body in honest water, to learn the grammar of slowness and the courtesy of distance, to carry light when given and to leave it when asked. He felt older without feeling heavy. He felt small without feeling less. The current that had brought him down now smoothed a hand along his back, the gesture of a friend who knows good timing. He let it lift him a little, not all the way, just enough to promise that tomorrow would find him ready for whatever road the ocean would enroll. He tucked his fins closer and let sleep gather him like the tide gathers foam, pulling him gently into the larger breathing of the sea. And so, the little baby shark finished his day upon the journey into the deep, his heart steady with the patience he had learned, his eyes bright with the gentle lights he had seen, his tail already remembering the slow and certain music of the blue. He had gone where colors loosen into thought and sound travels as touch, and he had returned carrying the quiet riches of that country. The night kept him kindly, and the ocean, pleased with his listening, wrote one more soft wave upon the ledger of his dreams. The little baby shark rose slowly from the deep paths he had explored, carrying with him the quiet patience of shadows and the gentle glow of lights that had guided him in darkness. His fins moved steadily, and the current lifted him upward into water that grew warmer, brighter, and more filled with sound. He felt that the sea was opening once more, preparing to show him a new face, something wider and greater than all he had known before. His journey had carried him far, and now it called him toward a place where many lives might meet. The water ahead shimmered faintly, and vibrations brushed against his body. They were not the single deep songs of whales or the solitary flashes of lanternfish. These were layered voices, thousands of them, weaving together into a chorus. He followed, his heart quickening, and soon he reached the mouth of a vast bay. Sunlight poured into the water, golden and strong, and the surface glimmered as though painted with stars. Beneath that glow, the ocean was alive with creatures. Sardines swirled in endless clouds, their silver bodies flashing in perfect unison. Dolphins leapt among them, their sleek shapes twisting playfully before diving back into the dance. Sea turtles glided calmly, their shells patterned with stories of journeys longer than time. Schools of brightly colored fish wove between the larger forms, turning the bay into a living mosaic of color and motion. The little shark hovered at the edge, his eyes wide, his heart swelling. This was the great harmony of the ocean, a gathering not of one kind, but of all. He swam carefully into the heart of the bay. Sardines parted around him like rivers, only to close again in glittering spirals. Dolphins passed by, their shadows rushing like quicksilver above. A turtle moved slowly beneath him, its steady rhythm anchoring the chaos into calm. Everywhere he turned, the sea carried him into new patterns, new movements, new songs. He felt not like an outsider, but like a note added to the music, small yet needed. The sardines shifted suddenly, splitting into two streams that curled around him before rejoining. Their movement created a whirlpool of silver, and the baby shark spun gently within it, his tail keeping time with the glittering flow. Above, dolphins leapt higher, their arcs catching the sunlight and sending showers of spray that sparkled as they fell. The bay shone with gold, silver, and blue, and the little shark felt himself lifted into joy. He swam beside a group of turtles, their large flippers sweeping gracefully. Their shells bore marks of long travels, scars of storms, and trails of algae, yet they moved without haste, their calm steadying the current itself. One turtle drifted near, its eye reflecting light like polished stone, and for a moment the little shark matched its rhythm, learning the piece of moving slowly through so much motion. The dolphins turned their leaps into circles, guiding sardines into spirals that spread outward like blooming flowers. Rays swept along the sandy bottom, their wings stirring clouds that rose and shimmered in the light. Above, seabirds dived into the waves and rose again, droplets falling like jewels back into the water. The bay was not only filled with creatures. It was filled with connections, each one shaping the other. The little shark realized he was part of something greater than himself. His journey had shown him the beauty of coral, the mystery of the deep, and the patience of light. But here he saw how all those lessons joined together. Harmony was not made of one song, but of many woven into one. He flicked his tail and joined the sardines, his body moving with theirs, his shadow blending into the great dance. The hours passed, but the gathering did not tire. Patterns shifted, voices rose and fell, light brightened and dimmed, yet the bay continued to sing. The baby shark's fins ached, but his spirit soared. He swam among dolphins, beneath turtles, between clouds of sardines, his eyes never resting, his heart always learning. He knew he would carry this vision forever. As the day waned, the golden light softened into rose and violet. The creatures began to drift outward, sardines streaming into long rivers, dolphins following in playful arcs, turtles gliding steadily toward the horizon. The bay grew quieter, its voices fading into echoes. The little shark remained for a time, floating in the calm left behind. The water shimmered faintly with plankton rising to replace the crowd, as if the sea itself was setting lanterns to honor what had passed. He turned then, following the current that carried him back toward his lagoon. His journey was not only an adventure but a circle. He had left his home to see the reef, to brave the deep, to witness the gathering, and now he returned with a heart filled by it all. The lagoon was waiting, not changed in shape, but waiting to be changed by his eyes. As he swam, he thought of the coral towers, of jellyfish glowing in silence, of manta rays drifting like clouds, of sardines flashing silver, of dolphins leaping in joy, of turtles carrying calm through the storm. Each memory was a treasure, not to be kept hidden, but to be shared through the way he swam, the way he lived, the way he waited for the tides. The lagoon came into view at last, its shallow waters glowing in the moonlight. The seaweed swayed as it always had, the sand rippled with gentle waves, the corals hummed softly. He entered slowly, curling his tail in gratitude. He no longer sighed as small, but as home, the place where journeys begin and where they return. He found his hollow among the seaweed and rested, his body tired, his heart calm. Above him, the stars shone in the night sky, mirrored by the glowing plankton below. He closed his eyes, and in his dreams he swam again through the reef, the deep, and the bay, carried by the harmony of the sea. And so, the little baby shark's journey came to an end, not with silence, but with music. He had learned that the ocean's greatest treasure was not its colors, its lights, or its mysteries alone, but the harmony created when every life, great and small, moved together as one.